I never imagined a simple piece of paper could shatter my world. But there it was, my son Thomas's wedding guest list, spread out on his kitchen table, with my name crossed out in thick black marker. Not accidentally, not as a draft, but deliberately, erased as if I didn't exist. I stood there frozen, my fingers trembling as they hovered over the page. The wedding was just 6 weeks away, and I'd stopped by to drop off some old family recipes Thomas had asked for. He and Claire were out running errands, and his roommate had let me in, telling me to make myself at home. I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that. The guest list was right there on the kitchen table, along with seating charts and sample menus. As the mother of the groom, I thought I'd take a quick look, maybe find out where I'd be sitting, who I'd be sharing a table with. That's when I saw it. Under family of the groom, every name was neatly typed, except mine. My name had been typed initially, but someone had crossed it out with such force that the marker had torn the paper slightly. Margaret Holloway, crossed out like an error that needed correction. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. My chest tightened, and I struggled to breathe. This had to be a mistake. I'd been involved in every step of the wedding planning. I'd gone dress shopping with Claire, helped choose the flowers, even contributed a significant amount toward the venue deposit when they were short on funds. I heard the front door open, followed by Thomas's laugh, that warm, familiar sound that had always brought me comfort ever since he was a little boy. But now it made my heart race with anxiety. "Mom?" Thomas appeared in the doorway, shopping bags in hand. His smile faltered when he saw what I was looking at. "You're early." Claire appeared behind him, her eyes immediately darting to the guest list under my hand. Something flashed across her face, not embarrassment or guilt, but annoyance. "Thomas," my voice barely a whisper, "why is my name crossed out from your wedding guest list?" The silence that followed was deafening. Claire slipped away, muttering something about putting groceries away, leaving my son to face me alone. "Mom, I was going to talk to you about this," he said, his voice unnaturally calm, rehearsed even. "We've had to make some difficult decisions about the guest list." "Difficult decisions?" I repeated, my voice catching. "I'm your mother, Thomas," he sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father it made my heart ache. "It's complicated. Claire's family is very traditional, and they have certain expectations about the wedding. What does that have to do with me? Not being invited to my only son's wedding?" My voice was rising now, the shock giving way to hurt and anger. "It's not that you're not invited," he said quickly, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "It's just that Claire's mother thinks it might be awkward given the family dynamics." "What family dynamics?" I asked, bewildered. "I've been nothing but supportive of your relationship." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "You know how you can be sometimes, Mom. A little intense. Claire's mother is concerned that might create tension." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Intense?" "I've welcomed Claire into our family from day one. I've helped with the wedding planning, contributed financially, and we appreciate that," he interjected. "But maybe it's best if you sit this one out." The casual way he said it, like he was asking me to skip a dinner party, not his wedding, broke something in me. 30 years of loving him, raising him alone after his father died, sacrificing everything to give him opportunities, and this was how he repaid me. "Did Claire put you up to this?" I asked quietly. His face hardened. "This was a joint decision, Mom. And honestly, your attitude right now is exactly why we think it might be best if you weren't there." I took a step back, feeling as if the floor was crumbling beneath me. "My attitude? I just discovered I've been excluded from the most important day of my son's life, and I'm not allowed to be upset about that? See, this is what I mean," he said, his voice taking on that patronizing tone that had become more frequent since he'd been with Claire. "You make everything about you. This wedding is about Claire and me. Our day, our choices. There was a time when I would have backed down, apologized, done anything to avoid conflict with my only child. But something inside me had finally snapped. "You're right, Thomas," I said, gathering my purse from the counter. "It is your choice, and now I have a choice to make too." I walked toward the door, my legs somehow carrying me despite feeling like they might give out at any moment. "Mom, wait," he called after me. But there was no urgency in his voice, no real desire for me to stay. I turned at the door. "For what it's worth, I hope you and Claire have a beautiful wedding. I would have loved to see my son get married, but I understand when I'm not wanted." The drive home was a blur. I don't remember stopping at red lights or making turns. I just remember the crushing weight on my chest, the burning in my eyes as I tried not to cry until I was safely behind closed doors. Once home, I collapsed on my sofa, the same one where I'd read Thomas bedtime stories, where I'd comforted him after heartbreaks, where we'd sat together planning his college applications. How had we gone from that to this? I reached for my phone, scrolling through recent messages with Thomas and Claire, searching for clues I might have missed. Had I been too overbearing, too critical, too intense? Whatever that meant. But all I found were warm exchanges about wedding details, my offers of help, their seemingly grateful responses. Nothing that would explain why I was suddenly unwelcome at the ceremony. My finger hovered over Thomas's name in my contacts. I could call him, try again to understand, but instead I set the phone down. If my son didn't want me at his wedding, there was nothing I could say to change his mind. That night I barely slept. I kept seeing that crossed-out name, that thick black marker eliminating me from one of the most important moments of my son's life, and mine. The morning brought no clarity, just a hollow ache that seemed to have settled permanently in my chest. I moved through my day mechanically, teaching my piano students with a smile that never reached my eyes, accepting their parents' excited questions about the upcoming wedding with vague responses. It wasn't until my last student left that my phone rang, my sister Beth calling for our weekly check-in. "How are the wedding plans coming along?" she asked cheerfully. And just like that, the dam broke. Through tears, I told her everything. The crossed-out name, Thomas's cold dismissal, the bewildering claim that I was too intense. "That doesn't sound like Thomas," Beth said, confusion evident in her voice. "This has to be Claire's doing, or her mother's." "It doesn't matter whose idea it was," I replied, wiping my eyes. "Thomas agreed to it. He chose them over me." Beth was quiet for a moment. "I'm coming over," she finally said, "and I'm bringing wine, lots of it." As I hung up, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror, eyes red-rimmed, face pale, looking every bit the discarded mother. But beneath the hurt, something else was stirring. A small spark of anger, of indignation. I had spent my entire adult life being Thomas's mother. I had sacrificed relationships, career opportunities, even my own dreams to give him the best life possible. And with one thick black marker stroke, he had decided I wasn't good enough to witness his marriage. For the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, it wasn't entirely my fault. Chapter 2. The truth behind the exclusion. Beth arrived at my doorstep that evening with 2 bottles of wine and a determined look in her eyes. My younger sister had always been my rock, the one person who saw through my careful composure when everyone else believed I was fine. "Before we start drinking," she said, setting the bottles on my kitchen counter, "I made some calls." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of calls?" "I spoke to Diane." Diane was our cousin, whose daughter was friends with one of Claire's bridesmaids. "Apparently there's been talk." My stomach tightened. "What kind of talk?" Beth poured us each a generous glass of wine before sitting across from me at the kitchen table. "Claire's mother has been telling people that you're trying to control the wedding, that you've been undermining Claire's decisions and making her feel insecure." I nearly choked on my wine. "That's absurd. I've agreed with every choice they've made. I even backed down when I thought the flowers were overpriced." "I know," Beth said, reaching for my hand. "But that's not all. Claire's apparently told Thomas that you never approved of her, that you've been putting on an act." The room seemed to spin around me. "That's not true. I've welcomed her from the beginning." Diane also mentioned that the final straw was something about a family heirloom. I closed my eyes as realization dawned on me. The pearls, Mom's pearls. For generations, the women in our family had worn my grandmother's pearl necklace on their wedding day. When Thomas and Claire got engaged, I had naturally mentioned the tradition, offering the pearls for Claire to wear. Claire said she already had her jewelry picked out. I explained to Beth. I told her it was completely her choice, but that the pearls would be there if she changed her mind. Well, according to Diane, Claire told her mother you tried to force the necklace on her, saying she wouldn't be a real part of the family unless she wore it. I set my glass down with a thud. "That's a complete lie. I would never say something like that." Beth's expression was grim. "It gets worse. Claire's mother has apparently been telling the wedding guests, her friends, her family, even some of our relatives, that you've been difficult throughout the planning process. that Thomas is heartbroken about your behavior, but felt he had no choice but to exclude you. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Not only was I being excluded from my son's wedding, but I was being painted as the villain in a story fabricated to excuse my absence. "Have you spoken to Thomas since yesterday?" Beth asked. I shook my head. "He hasn't called. I thought about reaching out, but..." I trailed off, remembering his cold dismissal. "You need to talk to him," Beth insisted. "Clear this up before it goes any further." Part of me wanted to retreat, to lick my wounds in private and let Thomas have his wedding without me. But the injustice of it all, the lies being spread about me, stirred something within me that wouldn't be silenced. "You're right," I said finally. "I need to try one more time." The next morning, I drove to Thomas's apartment, rehearsing what I would say. I wouldn't accuse or attack. I would simply tell my side of the story, make him understand that these allegations were false. But when I arrived, only Claire was home. For a moment, I considered leaving, but then I straightened my shoulders. Perhaps this was better. I could address the issues directly with her. "Margaret," she said, her surprise evident as she opened the door. "Thomas isn't here." "I know," I lied smoothly. "I came to talk to you." Reluctantly, she let me in. The guest list was no longer on the kitchen table, I noticed. "Claire," I began, keeping my voice gentle. "I think there's been a misunderstanding between us." "What do you mean?" Her voice was cool, defensive. "I heard that you felt I was trying to control aspects of the wedding, particularly about my mother's pearl necklace." A flash of something, guilt, annoyance, crossed her face. "I never said that." "So you don't feel that I've been undermining your decisions or making you feel insecure about the wedding plans?" Claire shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Margaret, wedding planning is stressful. Maybe things got exaggerated." "Exaggerated to the point that I'm no longer invited to my own son's wedding?" I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. "That was a mutual decision between Thomas and me," she said firmly. "We just want a peaceful day. And you believe my presence would prevent that?" I asked incredulously. Claire's expression hardened. "My mother thinks..." "This isn't about what your mother thinks," I interrupted, my patience wearing thin. "This is about you and Thomas excluding me based on false accusations." "They're not false," she snapped, her composure slipping. "You've always looked down on me." "You think I'm not good enough for your precious son?" I was stunned into silence. Where was this coming from? "Claire, I've never thought that. Never." "Really?" Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "The way you talk about Thomas's achievements, his potential, it's always with this implication that I'm holding him back." "That's not true," I protested. "I'm proud of Thomas, yes, but I've never suggested you're holding him back." "You don't have to say it directly," she retorted. "It's in every suggestion you make about his career. Every time you mention what his father would have wanted for him." I felt like I was seeing Claire clearly for the first time. Not the polite, somewhat reserved young woman who'd been in my son's life for the past 2 years, but someone harboring deep resentment toward me for reasons I couldn't fully understand. "Claire," I said carefully, "if I've ever made you feel that way, it was completely unintentional. I've only ever wanted Thomas to be happy, and he chose you." She looked away. "It doesn't matter now. The invitations have been sent. The plans are made. It matters to me," I said quietly. "He's my only child, Claire." For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of sympathy in her eyes. But then the front door opened, and Thomas walked in, stopping short when he saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Claire moved to his side. She was just leaving. The dismissal was clear. Thomas looked between us, clearly uncomfortable, but he made no move to contradict her. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just about a wedding invitation. It was about Claire establishing her position as the primary woman in Thomas's life, and my son allowing it to happen. "Thomas," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I came to clear up some misunderstandings, but I can see now that it doesn't matter what I say." "Mom," he began, but I held up a hand. "Just tell me one thing. Do you really believe I've been trying to undermine your relationship? That I don't think Claire is good enough for you?" His hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Whatever Claire and her mother had been feeding him, he had chosen to believe it. "I see," I said softly. "Well, I won't take up any more of your time." I walked past them toward the door, my dignity the only thing keeping me upright. As I reached for the doorknob, Thomas spoke. "Mom, wait, maybe we can find a compromise." I turned back. "What kind of compromise?" "Maybe." He glanced at Claire, who gave a slight nod. Maybe you could come to the reception, just not the ceremony itself. The suggestion felt like another slap in the face. I was good enough to celebrate with, but not to witness the actual marriage of my son? I don't think that will work for me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Enjoy your wedding, Thomas. This time, I made it to my car before the tears came. Not just tears of hurt, but of anger. Anger at Claire for her manipulation, at her mother for spreading lies, but most of all at Thomas for choosing to believe the worst of me. As I drove home, I realized something had shifted within me. The desperate need for my son's approval had been replaced by something else. A growing resolve that I deserved better than this treatment. I wasn't just a mother. I was a woman who had lived, loved, lost, and persevered. And while I would always love my son, I was done begging for a place in his life. Little did I know that fate had other plans. Plans that would force Thomas and Claire to confront the consequences of their decisions sooner than any of us expected. For 2 weeks, I moved through life like a ghost. I taught my piano students, attended my book club, even managed to smile at appropriate moments, but inside I felt hollow. I had stopped checking my phone for messages from Thomas. I had stopped hoping. I was arranging flowers when the doorbell rang. Probably Mrs. Henderson from next door bringing another casserole. Instead, I opened the door to find a woman I didn't recognize. Tall, professionally dressed, with a leather portfolio. Margaret Holloway? She asked. I nodded, puzzled. My name? Is Eleanor Davies. I'm the events coordinator at Lakeside Manor. She paused. Where your son's wedding is being held. My heart skipped a beat. Yes, I know the venue. May I come in? I'd like to speak with you about something important. Bewildered, I led her to my living room. Margaret, she began with a small smile. I apologize for showing up unannounced, but I felt this matter required a personal touch. What matter? I asked, confusion growing. Eleanor opened her portfolio and removed a document. This is the contract your son and his fiancée signed with Lakeside Manor. She pointed to a highlighted section. I skimmed it. Family inclusion clause, ethical standards, right to refuse service. I don't understand, I said. Lakeside Manor has a unique policy. We believe weddings should unite families, not divide them. She looked at me directly. It's come to our attention that you, the mother of the groom, have been excluded from the wedding. Is this correct? The directness caught me off guard. Yes, I admitted. Thomas and Claire decided I shouldn't attend. May I ask why? I hesitated. Then explained about the misunderstandings, the allegations that I was trying to control the wedding. Eleanor nodded. Margaret, our venue has a strict policy about family exclusion. The contract states that Lakeside Manor reserves the right to cancel the event if immediate family members have been excluded without legitimate cause. I stared at her, stunned. You're saying you might cancel their wedding? That's exactly what I'm saying, she confirmed matter-of-factly, unless the situation is resolved. How did you even find out I wasn't invited? Small towns, she said, with a slight smile. One of your piano students' mothers works for us. Jennifer Wilson mentioned it. Amanda's mom, I realized. Jennifer often stayed to chat after Amanda's lessons. Yes, but that's not the only reason I'm here. She hesitated. I know you, Margaret. I looked at her quizzically. 3 years ago, you organized a benefit concert for the Children's Hospital. My nephew was a patient. You gave him piano lessons in his room when he was too sick to leave. Memory stirred. Michael, the boy with leukemia? Eleanor nodded, emotion briefly crossing her face. The joy those lessons brought him during his treatment. I never forgot it. I remembered Michael, a thin, pale boy with surprising talent and a laugh that could light up a room. How is he doing? In remission, Eleanor said with a smile. He still plays piano, says he had the best teacher. Warmth bloomed in my chest, the first real warmth I'd felt in weeks. When Jennifer mentioned what was happening, I couldn't believe it. Not after the kindness you've shown. Eleanor's expression hardened slightly. So I checked our records and found that Thomas and Claire had booked with us. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Eleanor assured me. But I do need to inform your son and his fiancée about our policy. Panic gripped me. Please, I don't want to ruin their wedding. You wouldn't be ruining anything. Eleanor said firmly. They made a choice that violates our contract. Actions have consequences. The thought of their wedding being canceled because of me felt wrong, despite everything. What exactly does rectifying the situation mean? I asked. You would need to be properly invited and included, she explained. Not just permitted to attend, but acknowledged as the mother of the groom. I closed my eyes, imagining the scene. Thomas and Claire forced to invite me, resentment simmering beneath polite smiles. I appreciate what you're trying to do, I said, slowly. But I'm not sure this is the right approach. Eleanor studied me. What if I speak with them first without mentioning this conversation? Give them a chance to make this right on their own. All right, I agreed. But please don't tell them you've spoken to me. Of course, she promised. At the door, she paused. Margaret, you deserve to be at your son's wedding. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. After she left, I sat motionless, emotions warring. Within me, I was touched by Eleanor's intervention, but worried about Thomas's reaction. I didn't have to wonder long. 3 hours later, my phone rang. Thomas's name flashing on the screen for the first time in 2 weeks. Mom, he said, voice tight with barely controlled anger. Did you talk to the venue? Are you trying to sabotage my wedding? Hello to you too, Thomas, I said calmly. And no, I didn't reach out to Lakeside Manor. Then why is the coordinator suddenly telling us they might cancel because you're not invited? I imagine because it's their policy, I replied evenly. Apparently, it was in the contract you signed. This is unbelievable, he fumed. First you make a scene at my apartment, and now this? The unfairness stung. I didn't make a scene, Thomas. I tried to clear up misconceptions, and I had nothing to do with the venue's decision. Right, he said sarcastically. Just a coincidence. Did the coordinator explain what needs to happen for them to honor the contract? A pause. She said you need to be properly included in the wedding, he muttered. And what have you, and I... Claire decided. Another pause, longer this time. We don't have much choice. Every other venue is booked for that date. So, I ventured carefully, does this mean I'm invited to the wedding now? Thomas sighed heavily. Yes, Mom, you're invited to the wedding. The words should have brought relief, joy even. Instead, they left me feeling hollow. This wasn't a genuine change of heart. This was damage control. Thank you for letting me know, I said, surprisingly formal. Will you be sending a new invitation, or should I just show up? Mom, Thomas said, exasperation evident. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just want to be clear on the arrangements. Fine. Claire will send an invitation. The ceremony starts at 4 p.m. Please just be there and be pleasant. Be pleasant. As if I were a potentially unruly child who needed reminding of her manners. I'll be there, I promised, avoiding the second part of his request. Goodbye, Thomas. I hung up, hands trembling slightly. I was invited to my son's wedding again. Not because he wanted me there, not because he'd realized the injustice, but because a venue contract forced his hand. It wasn't the reunion I had imagined. It wasn't healing or heartwarming. But as I sat there in my quiet living room, I realized it was an opportunity, a chance to stand up for myself, to show Thomas and Claire that I deserved respect, not because a contract demanded it, but because it was the right thing to do. And somewhere deep inside, a small, resilient part of me dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, this forced invitation could be the first step toward genuine reconciliation. The invitation arrived 3 days later in a cream-colored envelope with elaborate calligraphy. Inside, the thick cardstock announced the wedding of Thomas James Holloway and Claire Elizabeth Wilson. My name was handwritten, clearly added after the invitations had been printed. I traced my fingers over the words, trying to feel something. Joy, perhaps, or vindication. Instead, I felt only a quiet resolve. I would attend this wedding not as a defeated woman grateful to be included, but as someone who deserved to be there. I was marking the date on my calendar when my doorbell rang again. This time it was Claire and her mother, Evelyn, an unexpected and unwelcome surprise. Margaret, Claire said with a brittle smile, we thought we should talk. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let them in. Evelyn Wilson swept past me, her designer perfume trailing behind her. I'd met her only twice before, and both times she'd barely acknowledged my existence. Lovely home, she said, her tone suggesting the opposite as she surveyed my modest living room. Thank you, I replied, not bothering to mask my skepticism. What can I do for you both? Claire perched on the edge of my sofa, looking uncomfortable. Evelyn remained standing, clearly in charge of this impromptu visit. We understand there's been a Misunderstanding about the wedding, Evelyn began, her voice syrupy sweet. I wouldn't call my exclusion a misunderstanding, I said evenly. It seemed quite intentional. Claire flushed, but Evelyn's smile never wavered. Water under the bridge. What matters now is moving forward harmoniously. I waited, saying nothing. We've added you back to the guest list, of course, Evelyn continued, but we need to discuss a few logistics. Logistics, I repeated. Yes, for instance, the mother of the groom traditionally sits in the front row during the ceremony. Evelyn's smile tightened. But given the circumstances, we think it might be less awkward if you sat a few rows back. I stared at her, incredulous. You want to seat me in the back of my own son's wedding? Not the back, Claire interjected quickly. Just not the front row. The seating arrangement has already been finalized, Evelyn added. Moving things around would be quite disruptive. I took a deep breath. What else? Evelyn and Claire exchanged glances. We also felt that perhaps you might want to skip the rehearsal dinner, Evelyn suggested. It's going to be quite intimate, and we wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable. And the photographer mentioned group photos will be on a tight schedule, Claire added. So we've planned the family portraits without. Without me? I finished for her. Claire at least had the decency to look embarrassed. It's just easier this way. I see, I said, my voice remarkably steady despite the anger bubbling inside me. So, you're inviting me because you have to, but you'd prefer I remain as invisible as possible. We're trying to avoid conflict, Evelyn said sharply, her pleasant facade slipping slightly. No, I corrected her. You're trying to marginalize me while technically fulfilling the venue's requirements. Claire leaned forward. My mom is just trying to help Margaret. We all want this wedding to go smoothly. I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. Let me be clear. I will attend my son's wedding as his mother, not as an afterthought to be hidden away. I will sit where mothers of grooms traditionally sit. I will attend the rehearsal dinner, and I will be in the family photos. Evelyn's face hardened. Now you're being difficult. No, I replied calmly. I'm refusing to be erased. This isn't your decision to make, Evelyn snapped. Actually, I said, according to Eleanor Davies, it is. Lakeside Manor's policy states I must be properly included in the wedding. I doubt relegating me to the background qualifies. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. So you did speak with the venue? After Thomas called me, I clarified. Not before. Claire stood up, clearly uncomfortable with the mounting tension. We should go, Mom. Evelyn wasn't finished. Thomas said you'd be reasonable, she said accusingly. I'm being entirely reasonable, I replied. I'm simply refusing to be treated like an unwelcome stranger at my son's wedding. After they left, I sat down, my knees suddenly weak. Standing up to them had taken more courage than I expected. Part of me wanted to call Thomas, to explain what had happened, but I knew it would be futile. He'd made his choice. The phone rang later that evening. It was Eleanor. I hope you don't mind me calling, she said. I wanted to check on you. Claire and her mother visited the venue today, asking about the specifics of our family inclusion policy. They visited me too, I replied. They tried to negotiate my effective invisibility. Eleanor made a disapproving sound. I made our position clear. You are to be treated as the mother of the groom in every respect, or we cannot host the wedding. I felt a rush of gratitude. Thank you. I also have a feeling they'll try to go around me, Eleanor added. I've instructed all staff about the situation. No one will help them sideline you. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine, considering my options. I could continue this battle, forcing my presence upon a son who had chosen someone else's version of me over reality. Or I could walk away, decline the invitation, and preserve my dignity. But deep down, I knew that attending this wedding wasn't just about Thomas anymore. It was about standing up for myself, refusing to be painted as the villain in someone else's story. My phone chimed with a text from Thomas. Mom, can we meet tomorrow? We need to talk. I replied with a simple yes, and suggested a neutral location, the cafe where I often graded student compositions, a public place where neither of us would make a scene. The next morning, I arrived early, choosing a table in the corner that offered some privacy. Thomas walked in 5 minutes late, looking tired. He'd always been handsome with his father's sharp jawline and my dark eyes. But today, there was a weariness about him that made my heart ache despite everything. Thanks for meeting me, he said, sliding into the chair opposite mine. Of course. An uncomfortable silence settled between us. Once, conversation had flowed easily between us. Now we were like polite strangers. Claire told me about their visit, he finally said. She was upset. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied carefully. But I'm not willing to be hidden away at your wedding, Thomas. He sighed, rubbing his temple. Can't you just compromise? For one day? Compromise? I echoed. Thomas, I've already been excluded, lied about, and now asked to pretend I'm barely related to you. Where exactly is the compromise on their part? You don't understand how stressful this is for Claire. And what about how stressful it is for me? I interrupted, keeping my voice low despite the emotion welling up. To be treated like an inconvenience by my own son, Thomas had the grace to look ashamed, if only briefly. I'm caught in the middle here, Mom. No, Thomas, you chose a side. The words hurt to say, but they were true. You believed things about me that weren't true, without even giving me the benefit of the doubt. Claire wouldn't lie to me, he said defensively. Yet here we are, I replied softly. I'm willing to attend your wedding, to smile and celebrate your happiness, but I will not be hidden away like some shameful secret. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. I don't want to lose this venue, he finally admitted, and I don't want a scene at my wedding. I have never caused a scene in my life, I reminded him. That's not who I am, and you know it. Another pause, longer this time. Fine, you'll sit in the front row. You'll be in the photos. But please, just be civil to Claire and her mother. I could have pointed out that I wasn't the one being uncivil, but I let it go. I will be the perfect mother of the groom, I promised. They'll have nothing to complain about. Thomas nodded, relief visible on his face. He thought he was getting what he wanted. Peace at any price. What he didn't realize was that I had changed. The woman who would have done anything to make him happy, even at her own expense, was gone. As we parted outside the cafe, Thomas hesitated, then said, "See you at the rehearsal dinner." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a reconciliation. But it was something. As I watched him walk away, I knew the real test was still to come. The wedding was 3 weeks away, and between now and then, I needed to prepare. Not just my outfit or my smile, but my heart. I needed to be strong enough to stand in a room full of people who believed the worst of me and hold my head high. Because this wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. One small victory at a time. The rehearsal dinner was at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I arrived on time in a navy blue dress, elegant but unmemorable. I wanted to blend in while maintaining my dignity. My heart pounded as I neared the private dining room. I hadn't seen most of Thomas's extended family in years. Mrs. Holloway? I turned to find Eleanor beside me. Eleanor, what are you doing here? She smiled. Venue coordinators typically attend rehearsal dinners. We need to confirm final details. The relief I felt was embarrassing in its intensity. At least I had one ally. Inside, Thomas approached. Mom, you're here. He gave me an awkward kiss on the cheek. I've seated you at table 3 with Aunt Beth and Uncle Jim. Not at the family table with him and Claire, but at least with my sister. A small victory. Beth hugged me fiercely. You look gorgeous, she whispered, and I'm so proud of you for being here. The dinner proceeded calmly until Evelyn clinked her glass for attention. As mother of the bride, she began, I want to thank everyone for celebrating Claire and Thomas. After praising Claire, she turned to my son. Thomas, you've become like the son we never had. The way you've handled recent family difficulties shows what a remarkable man you are. My cheeks burned. The reference was clear to everyone. We're so happy that tomorrow will be perfect, Evelyn continued, with everyone in their proper place. Her eyes flicked to me briefly, a triumphant smile playing at her lips. Beth squeezed my hand under the table. Ignore her, she whispered. We moved to the adjacent courtyard for the ceremony rehearsal. Mother of the groom traditionally stands here, Eleanor explained, guiding me to the front row. Evelyn's lips tightened, but she couldn't object. Everything went smoothly until the photographer discussed family photos. After the ceremony, we'll do family portraits. Bride and groom, then bride's family, then groom's family, then combined. Actually, Claire interjected, we've decided to do things differently. We'll do photos with my family first, then with Thomas's extended family, and then— I'm sorry, Eleanor interrupted smoothly. but protocol is to include the mother of the groom in primary family photos. That's standard at Lakeside Manor. Claire flushed. We've already discussed this. We have a specific plan, a plan that excludes Margaret from the main photos? Eleanor asked. I'm afraid that won't work with our venue guidelines. The courtyard fell silent. Claire looked to Thomas, expectantly. Maybe we should just follow standard protocol, he suggested feebly. This is ridiculous, Evelyn snapped. We are paying for this wedding, and we will decide how it proceeds. Actually, Eleanor corrected gently, you signed a contract with specific terms. Family inclusion is non-negotiable. This is about photography, not inclusion. She's invited, isn't she? Proper inclusion means treating family members with the respect their position deserves. Respect? Evelyn scoffed. After she's tried to control every aspect of this wedding? After she's manipulated her way back in? All eyes turned to me. In the past, I might have backed down, but I wasn't that person anymore. I have never tried to control this wedding, I said quietly but firmly. Every accusation against me has been false, but no one asked for my side. Oh, please, Claire cut in. You've criticized every choice we've made. When? I challenged. Give me one example. Claire faltered. You said the flowers were overpriced. I said they were beautiful, I corrected. And when Thomas mentioned the cost I offered to help pay, that wasn't criticism, it was support. You've always undermined me, Claire insisted, her voice lacking conviction. Claire, I said softly, I have receipts for every conversation we've had about the wedding. Text messages, emails, all supportive, all respectful of your choices. I kept them because I was confused about why you suddenly seemed to hate me. Claire's eyes widened. She hadn't expected this. That's enough, Evelyn interjected. We're not going to be attacked. No one is attacking you, Eleanor pointed out. Margaret is defending herself against your accusations. Thomas stepped forward, his expression troubled. Mom, do you really have those messages? I nodded. I saved everything because I couldn't understand what I'd done wrong. Something shifted in Thomas's face. Doubt, perhaps, or the first glimmer of realization. Thomas, Claire said sharply, we need to go. But Thomas didn't move. I want to see those messages. Not now, Claire pleaded. Why not? He asked, still looking at me. Because she's manipulating you, Claire burst out. She's always trying to come between us. By defending herself with evidence? Thomas asked, strangely calm. That's not manipulation, Claire. That's the truth. The courtyard went silent. Even Evelyn seemed momentarily speechless. I think, Eleanor said, that we should conclude the rehearsal. The ceremony is at 4 p.m. tomorrow. As people dispersed, Thomas approached me. Can we talk? Privately? We moved to a quiet corner. Do you really have those messages? He asked again. Yes, I said simply. Every single one. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. I need to see them. Tonight. Thomas. Please, Mom. I need to know the truth. In his eyes, I saw genuine confusion and pain. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope that my son, the real Thomas, might still be reachable. Okay, I agreed. Let's go to my house now. As we left, I caught Eleanor's eye. She gave me an encouraging nod. I didn't know what would happen next, but something had shifted. The carefully constructed narrative Claire and her mother had built was beginning to crumble. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I dared to believe that the truth might actually matter. Thomas sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through months of messages. His face grew increasingly troubled as he read one supportive text after another. My enthusiastic response to Claire's dress, my offers to help with centerpieces, my suggestion of a vendor who could save them money. Don't understand, he finally said. These don't match what Claire told me at all. What did she tell you? I asked softly. That you criticized her taste, that you tried to take over the planning, that you said the pearls were mandatory. None of that happened, Thomas. He was quiet for a moment. I believe you, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't before. Those simple words lifted, a weight I'd carried for weeks. Why would Claire lie? He asked, more to himself than to me. I touched his hand. I can't answer that, but it's something you need to discuss with her. Thomas left shortly after, looking both relieved and troubled. Whatever came next, I could face it with my dignity intact. The wedding day arrived bright and clear. I dressed in the pale blue outfit I'd chosen months ago when I still believed I'd be welcomed. Beth arrived to drive me, protective as always. Lakeside Manor was stunning. Nestled against the water with mountains rising in the distance. Eleanor spotted me and came over. "Good afternoon, Margaret. You look lovely." "Thank you for everything," I said, meaning it deeply. "Just doing my job. Your seat is reserved in the front row, as we discussed." As the ceremony began, I took my place, ignoring the whispers from other guests. I was here as Thomas's mother, regardless of what anyone thought. Thomas stood at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo. His eyes found mine, and he gave me a small smile. Genuine, if tentative. Something had changed since last night. Claire appeared in her white gown. She was beautiful, I had to admit. But as she walked down the aisle, I noticed her eyes were slightly red, her smile strained. The ceremony proceeded without incident. They exchanged vows, rings, and a kiss. Whatever had happened between them after Thomas left my house, they had decided to go through with the wedding. At the reception, I stayed mostly with Beth and Jim, avoiding Evelyn's glares from across the room. "Mrs. Holloway?" I turned to find Claire standing behind me. "May I speak with you for a moment?" she asked formally. I followed her to a quiet corner. "Thomas showed me the messages," she said without preamble. "He confronted me last night." I waited, saying nothing. I wasn't entirely honest about some things. An understatement, but I let it pass. My mother has specific ideas about how things should be. When she started criticizing you, it was easier to agree than to stand up to her. "You let her drive a wedge between Thomas and me," I said quietly. Claire looked down. "I know. Thomas made that clear." She took a deep breath. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I've told Thomas the truth." I studied her face, seeing not malice but insecurity. "Thank you for telling me." She nodded and walked away. I doubted we would ever be close, but perhaps honesty was a start. A few minutes later, Thomas appeared at my side. "May I have this dance?" As we moved onto the floor, I felt eyes on us from all directions. The mother-son dance hadn't been on the program, another detail that had been overlooked. "Claire told me everything," Thomas said, "about how her mother manipulated her and how she went along with it." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we have some serious conversations ahead of us. But first, I wanted to dance with my mom at my wedding." That dance meant more than any apology. It was Thomas publicly acknowledging me, choosing to honor our relationship regardless of what others thought. When the song ended, he hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry I doubted you." "I know," I said, and found that the hurt, while still there, had begun to heal. Later, I slipped away quietly. I had seen what I needed to see, my son standing in his truth, beginning to break free from manipulation. Eleanor found me as I was leaving. "Heading out already?" I nodded. "I've done what I came to do." "Which was?" she asked with a knowing smile. "To be present," I replied. "Not just physically, but truly present, speaking my truth, standing my ground." "You've done that beautifully. Will you be all right?" I looked back at the reception, then turned toward the sunset over the lake. "I'm more than all right," I said, and meant it. For the first time in weeks, I feel free. As I walked away, I realized something profound had shifted within me. I had come thinking this was about reclaiming my relationship with Thomas, but it had actually been about reclaiming myself, my voice, my dignity, my truth. Thomas and I would rebuild our relationship, slowly but surely. But what mattered more was that I had stood up for myself when it counted. I had refused to be erased. And in doing so, I had discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. A strength that would carry me forward no matter what came next.